The day my parents were scheduled to sponsor a student from the poverty program, the brother and sister were waiting eagerly in the parlor. The sister clutched the hem of her faded school uniform, while the brother stared straight at my diamond necklace with hungry eyes. In my past life, these two ingrates ruined me. One stole my fiancé, the other drained my family's fortune, and eventually, they sold me off to a remote mountain village where I was tortured to death. Reborn right at the moment of signing the confirmation, I turned my pen and pointed it toward the window at a filthy little girl who was currently squeezing a live rat to death with her bare hands. Her eyes, dark as obsidian, glinted with bloodlust. "Let's sponsor her," I said with a bright laugh. After all, this was the future unhinged queen who would tear apart 50 scumbags with her bare hands. Handing her a knife ahead of schedule seemed just right. "Mr. Sterling, these are the children in our village who meet the criteria for sponsorship." The moment I opened my eyes, I was greeted by dilapidated mud walls and a row of children in rags standing before me, all about my age. I looked down at my own hands, tiny childlike hands, and realized immediately I had been reborn. The memory of the torture I suffered before my death sent a chill down my spine. I immediately hugged my mom's waist and buried my head in her chest. Mom asked gently, concerned, "Chloe, honey, what's wrong?" I didn't speak, I just held her tighter. Thinking of my parents' tragic fate 10 years down the line, I mustered the courage to look at the culprits behind it all, the Wood siblings. Just then, rows of text, like character bios in a video game, floated above their heads, matching the blurry images I had seen right before I died. That's when I realized exactly where the tragedy of 10 years later stemmed from. Tyler Woods and Tiffany Woods were the students my family sponsored in my past life. One held the underdog hero script, and the other held the Cinderella script. My family was merely the stepping stone for their plotlines to begin. With our sponsorship, their lives were turned upside down. They received unprecedented resources and an elite education. But who could have guessed that the first thing they'd do after learning to walk was to turn around and stab us? After Tyler joined my family's company, he fabricated evidence of tax evasion against my dad, causing him to die of a sudden heart attack. Tyler then seized control of the company, leaping up to become the majority shareholder. Tiffany wasn't idle either. She hooked up with my fiancé, infuriating my mom to death, and finally sold me off to their wretched little village, where I was trapped and abused until I died. I gave them a chance to see the light, but they dragged me into the abyss. How ridiculous. Once I composed myself, I looked at my dad, who was hesitating. Noticing my gaze, he crouched down and asked softly, "Chloe, who do you think Dad should sponsor?" I finally lifted my eyes to look at the row of children. My parents were self-made and had done plenty of charity work over the years, but this was their first time sponsoring kids from a remote mountain region. To show their sincerity, they brought me along on the 1,000-mile journey to this tiny village. Aside from helping the group generally, my parents intended to choose a few kids for long-term sponsorship and bring them back to New York to provide them with the best education. In my last life, my parents asked for my opinion just the same. But before I could finish speaking, Tyler and Tiffany fell to their knees in tears, begging me to choose them. Their fake pitiful act triggered my sympathy, so I chose them. I never imagined that I was inviting wolves into the henhouse from that very moment. Once Dad asked for my opinion, sure enough, the Wood siblings fell to their knees with a heavy thud. Tiffany's dark, little face was covered in tears as she sobbed and reached out to tug at my dress. "Miss Chloe, please choose me and my brother. We promised to study hard and not let you down." Tyler followed close behind, wailing about their family's hardships. "Mom and Dad died right after we were born, and now Grandma is sick too. We really want to go to school. Please, Miss Chloe, have a heart." Their move caught everyone off guard, and my parents' eyes showed a hint of heartache and sympathy. The other kids, having never seen such a dramatic scene, stood frozen in place, afraid to step forward. The Wood siblings were still wailing, but I remained unmoved. Suddenly, I spotted a girl huddled in the corner of the room. She was filthy, looking like a little beggar, but the bold text hovering over her head shone brightly in my eyes. "Unhinged heroine. Raven patricide matricide." I didn't have the stomach to read the long string of text that followed, because when Raven turned her head, her eyes met mine. They were pitch black, possessing a depth far beyond her age, flashing with intense hope. A voice in my heart told me that choosing her would not be a mistake. So, amidst my parents' surprised looks, I walked slowly over to Raven and took her hand. "Mom, Dad, let's pick her." Raven looked younger than me. The moment she heard me choose her, those obsidian eyes locked onto me tightly, and her grip on my hand unconsciously tightened. After a long moment, I heard a very faint whisper. "I won't let you down." My parents were surprised, but they didn't ask questions. They turned to the village chief to get the details. An hour later, holding little Raven's hand, I sat inside our Rolls-Royce. Through the open window, I saw the Wood siblings staring at me with looks that clung like maggots to bone, instantly sending a chill through my body. Their eyes held a malice and scheming that didn't belong to children, but the moment I looked back, they reverted to their usual innocent, pitiful expressions. Little Raven sensed my unease and squeezed my hand, her childish voice piping up. "Miss Chloe, I will protect you." I looked at her, and the intense anxiety I'd felt since my rebirth was miraculously soothed. The power of the plot was strong, though, just like in my previous life, the Wood siblings appeared downstairs at my house. I wasn't surprised and put a smile on my face. "Chloe, come here." Dad waved at me from downstairs, smiling. I walked over obediently as he introduced the two standing before him. "This is Tyler and Tiffany Woods." Shortly after we left, their only relative passed away from illness. I thought about it and decided to sponsor them through college anyway. "The child you chose will receive the same treatment." I smiled and greeted the Wood siblings, and they gave me friendly smiles in return. "Hello, Miss Chloe." Just then, Raven appeared behind me unnoticed. Her small hand gripped the hem of my shirt tightly, her eyes wide with fear like a startled deer as she looked at the siblings. Then she said something that shocked us all. "Miss Chloe, Grandma Woods didn't die of an illness." The Grandma Woods Raven referred to was the siblings' only relative. My parents froze. They had only received news of the grandmother's passing 2 days ago. It was precisely because these two kids had become orphans with no parents or grandparents that my parents' hearts softened enough to offer the extra sponsorship. Raven whispered. "The day you left, I saw Tiffany put rat poison in her grandma's medicine." "What? Rat poison?" Dad's shocked gaze fell on Tiffany, his brow furrowing. "Raven, are you sure? You can't just say things like that. Do you have proof?" Raven seemed terrified, hiding behind me, her voice as quiet as a mosquito. "That day, only Miss Chloe and I were together." My parents' gaze shifted to me. I looked up at Tiffany's tightly pursed lips, then lowered my head and stayed silent. To my doting parents, this reaction undoubtedly confirmed Raven's words. Mom pulled me aside, crouched down to look me in the eye, and asked gently, "Honey, tell Mom, did you really see it?" I pouted and suddenly threw myself into Mom's arms, my voice choking up. "I'm sorry, Mom, I was too scared." I didn't say it explicitly, but my reaction explained everything. Mom hugged me tightly, her face already darkening. Tiffany and Tyler hadn't realized what was happening yet, but my parents were already looking at them differently. Seeing the shift in atmosphere, Tiffany let the tears fall on command. "Raven, my brother and I aren't a threat to you. We just want a chance to go to school. Is that wrong?" Tyler dropped straight to his knees before my parents. "Mr. Sterling, my sister and I only had Grandma left. How could we possibly hurt her? Please, you have to believe us." Their expressions were sincere, but only I caught the vicious look they shot at Raven the moment they bowed their heads. That look clearly blamed Raven for blocking their path. They looked ready to skin her alive. After all, how good could someone be if they poisoned their own grandmother? In my last life, Grandma Woods also died at Tiffany's hands. Her grandmother didn't like her, and her life had been miserable. Compared to Tyler, she was downright tragic. So the night before we arrived, she used the same method to kill her. It was just bad luck for them that, because of my change in choice, they missed the chance to come to New York, and the grandmother's death became nothing more than a plot device. My parents didn't respond directly to Tiffany. They simply called the butler to take them away. I took Raven and turned back upstairs, catching a glimpse of my parents' grim faces before I left. My parents might not fully trust Raven, but they certainly trusted me. I couldn't change their decision to sponsor someone, so the choice of who got sponsored had to be mine. I only realized right before I died in my last life that Tiffany and Tyler had seen their own life scripts long ago. To them, I was just a tool in a novel. Raven's arrival threw a wrench in the Woods siblings' plans. My parents ultimately decided to drop the sponsorship for the Woods family. When I heard the news, I was busy decorating a room for Raven. "Miss Chloe, this is too fancy," Raven said, looking down uncomfortably at the dress she was wearing. She was flustered, not knowing where to put her hands, her face flushed red. I smiled and pinched her cheek, which didn't have much meat on it. "My name is Chloe Sterling. You don't need to call me Mississippi. From now on, you live with me, and we go to school together." Raven looked at me seriously, her pitch-black eyes shining, and nodded heavily. That year, I was 9 and Raven was 7. Raven hadn't attended school before age 7, and her health was in bad shape. Once my parents found out, they hired a nutritionist to take care of both of us. Raven was 2 years younger than me and attended the same school but in a lower grade. Since getting the chance to study, Raven acted like a person dying of thirst who had finally found water. She didn't dare slack off for a second, terrified she wouldn't be able to grasp everything laid out before her, so she studied with desperate intensity. True to her heroine script, Raven possessed exceptional intelligence. With a proper education and her relentless daily effort, she skipped 2 grades quickly. By the time I was in 9th grade, she took the high school entrance exams with me and successfully got into the best prep school in the city. Once we hit high school, a gap started to form between Raven and me. Even though I had lived through this once before, she could learn concepts in one go and even apply them to other things, while I had to study them 2 or 3 times. As the exams piled up, she firmly held the top spot in her grade, while I hovered in the upper middle, neither great nor terrible. Sometimes I felt bad. Why, despite being reborn, did I not get a cheat code like in the TV shows, or have genius-level intelligence? Over the years, my relationship with Raven was neither good nor bad. It was like there was an invisible film between us, impenetrable, unbreakable. As a student sponsored by my family, she was always dutiful and reserved, and due to my nature, I wasn't overly warm either. Despite my repeated insistence over the years not to call me Miss Chloe, Raven would always subconsciously use the title. How many times have I said it? Just call me by my name. After hearing the uncomfortable title yet again, I finally snapped, my tone tinged with anger. Raven, who was explaining a math problem to me, froze for a second, then quickly lowered her voice. "Apologies, Chloe. Ever since hitting a bottleneck in my studies, my emotions had been volatile." Raven noticed and offered to tutor me. In my last life, because my family was wealthy, I didn't put much effort into studying, focusing more on hobbies. I knew little about company management, which gave the Woods siblings their chance. This time around, I gave up those useless hobbies and focused on academics and learning business management. Raven, while juggling her own studies, made time to help me review. But recently, no matter how hard I tried, my grades wouldn't budge. Frustration piled up, and my mood was dark. Realizing I had spoken too harshly, I lowered my head in guilt. "I'm sorry, my tone was bad. Don't take it to heart." Raven smiled faintly and shook her head. "If you're unhappy, we don't have to study today." I quickly grabbed the worksheet back. "I'm not unhappy, I want to study." Raven looked at me quietly, her dark eyes seeming to see through everything. She didn't say more, seemingly sensing my anxiety. She reached out to take the test paper to explain the next part. When she reached over, her collar shifted, and I caught a glimpse of angry red welts hidden beneath her clothes. My pupils shrank instantly. I pulled her collar aside, my voice frantic. "What is this?" "You're hurt." As I checked, I realized Raven was covered in wounds, big and small, bruises of varying shades. The shocking injuries made me frown. Under my persistent questioning, she finally told me the truth. After starting high school, Raven began boarding there. Our contact had decreased, but I never imagined she was being bullied the whole time. These injuries were likely their handiwork. In a flash, I realized a paradox I had long ignored. The Raven of the previous life carved a bloody path for herself, enduring countless hardships. Now that I sponsored her, I smoothed out her road, But the tribulations she was destined to face for her growth had returned to her in another form. I couldn't tell if I felt more heartache or guilt. I quickly called our private doctor to give Raven a full checkup. But the doctor's words left me dumbfounded. "Miss Sterling, Raven is fine. Many of the injuries on her body are from practicing martial arts." Practicing martial arts? I looked at Raven in surprise. She smiled helplessly and nodded. "When they first started bullying me, I did get hurt quite a bit. But not long after, I started using my free time to learn kickboxing. Now none of them can beat me." Raven brushed it off lightly, but I couldn't imagine the malice and pain she had endured during that time. My eyes stung, and I suddenly hugged the girl in front of me. She felt frail, as if a gust of wind could blow her over. This girl, younger than me, had so much courage and composure that I lacked. Because of this, I cared for Raven even more than before. Since she wouldn't talk about her grievances, I investigated them myself. I found out that Raven had been bullied from the moment she stepped into high school. Elite high schools always have a fair share of trust fund layabouts waiting to inherit the family fortune. Some of them looked down on Raven's status as a charity case, and were jealous of her striking looks and grades. The bullying went on for half a year. At first, it was just isolation and pranks within the dorms, then it escalated to classroom harassment. Someone would damage her desk and chair, write vulgar insults in her textbooks, or block her in the bathroom and force her to drink filthy water, until it finally escalated to physical violence. But Raven never told me any of this. Following the trail, I found the ringleader behind the bullying, a girl I didn't know named Sabrina Stone. But the corporation behind her was no stranger to me. Years ago, after my parents dropped the sponsorship for the Wood siblings, they were sent back to the village. But not long after, they received sponsorship from another benevolent figure, Sabrina's mother, CEO Stone of the Stone Group. Sabrina was her only daughter. Shortly after returning to school, I planned to confront Sabrina myself, but I didn't expect Raven to strike first. "What are you doing? You psycho!" When I arrived at the rooftop, Sabrina's shrill screams filled the air. 5 or 6 of her lackeys were lying on the ground, groaning in pain, while Raven held Sabrina by the hair, pressing her into the ground and thrashing her. Seeing me, Sabrina's eyes lit up instantly. As if seeing a savior, she screamed at me regardless of the situation. "Hey, you by the door! You're a Sterling, right? Call the police. Call a teacher. Why are you just standing there?" I didn't say a word. I reached back and locked the door. In the moment she was distracted, Raven slammed her head heavily against the concrete. Blood trickled down her forehead. She instantly lost the strength to speak and slumped over, passing out. Raven was pretty banged up herself, and the ferocity in her eyes hadn't faded. She looked like an enraged wolf. She glanced at me, froze, then frowned, her tone sharp. "Why are you here? You shouldn't be in a place like this." I was surprised by Raven's decisiveness, but then I remembered. She was the girl who carved a bloody path for herself in my past life. How could she not have this kind of grit? I walked up to her and dumped a bucket of prepared sewage water over the unconscious Sabrina. "Why do you think I'm here?" Raven stepped back in disgust, her gaze softening. Awakened by the pungent stench, seeing the filth covering her, Sabrina couldn't hold it back anymore and broke down crying, though the threat screaming from her mouth showed she hadn't given up. Raven gave her a cold look, suddenly pulled a box cutter from her pocket, and pressed it against Sabrina's neck as the girl stared in horror. Her voice was grim. "If I kill you here, then kill them. Do you think anyone will find your body?" Sabrina was so scared tears streamed down her face. She looked at me, begging for help. I spread my hands. "Why look at me? I might help her bury the body." Sabrina asked me, her voice trembling. "Raven is just trash. She only has what she has today, because of your money. She thinks she's pretty, so she seduces men. Why are you helping her?" I laughed in anger. "Seducing who?" "Tyler Woods." Hearing the familiar name, Sabrina's eyes bulged, staring at me as if I were about to steal her man. I have to say, Tyler really lived up to his harem protagonist role, charming girl after girl until they were senseless, willing to fight each other for him. I looked at Raven, who seemed to know exactly what I was going to ask. She explained, "Tyler and Tiffany are at the high school next door. I don't know where this crazy woman got the idea I was trying to steal Tyler from her. Fire seemed to spit from Sabrina's eyes. Slut. Playing the victim. Tyler said you shamefully seduced him, using the excuse that you felt guilty for stealing his sponsorship spot when you were kids to get close to him. Looking at the girl clawing the air in front of me, I was reminded of myself in my past life, slowly walking toward tragedy, equally pathetic and unaware. At the best age of their lives, girls should be shining and thriving, not fighting each other over a man. Even knowing it was the power of Tyler's script, I couldn't help but feel sad. CEO Stone was a woman of action. The moment she heard her precious daughter was being bullied, she stormed the school, but I intercepted her at the gate. I told her the whole story. Under her wary gaze, I produced the evidence I'd collected proving Tyler Woods had intentionally seduced Sabrina. CEO Stone, you see the state Miss Sabrina is in. You raised her to be an heiress, surely not just to be a stepping stone for Tyler Woods. Sitting across from me, CEO Stone's eyes shifted, suppressing her rage. She had climbed her way up from the bottom. She didn't need me to explain Tyler's intentions. She was a reasonable person. Once she found the root cause, she politely took her leave. She had always been lenient and doting toward Sabrina, and even if she noticed Tyler's improper intentions, she might not have taken them seriously. But now, her only daughter had gone completely astray. Not long after, news came that Sabrina had been sent abroad. Rumor had it that on the day she left, she screamed and cried, refusing to go, yelling that she had to see Tyler no matter what, until she was knocked unconscious and carried away. After this incident, CEO Stone naturally stopped sponsoring the Woods siblings. With their funding cut off, surviving in New York, where every inch of land costs a fortune, became a problem. But I didn't expect Tiffany to have the audacity to come find me. I was at a boutique with Raven, picking out haute couture gowns for my birthday party in 2 months. I don't know how Tiffany got into the club, but she appeared before me, eyes red. Miss Chloe, is it really you? She looked at me with delight, as if seeing a long-lost friend. I looked Tiffany up and down. Her appearance and personality were identical to her past life. I responded with polite detachment. Tiffany seemed not to sense my coldness, crying to herself, tears falling on cue. Miss Chloe, Grandma's death really had nothing to do with me. I was framed. So you're saying I'm blind? I cut her off. Tiffany panicked and explained, crying even harder. That's not what I meant. How could you be wrong, Miss Chloe? You must have been deceived by someone. The finger pointing was blatant. Sure enough, the moment she lowered her head, I caught the unwillingness and resentment hidden in her eyes. Her gaze landed on Raven beside me, specifically on the couture gown and expensive jewelry she was wearing. In my past life, as an only child with parents too busy to come home, even though the Woods siblings didn't live with us, they found excuses to visit constantly. Eventually, we became friends. Whatever I had, Tiffany got a share of. During her time with the Stones, she probably used the same tactics on Sabrina. Now that she had fallen from grace, she couldn't accept the disparity. I didn't speak, but someone else did. A voice came from the door. Where did this little beauty come from, crying like a pear blossom bathed in rain? The frivolous voice rang out, and I knew who it was without looking, my fiancé from my past life, Julian Vance. Tiffany followed the voice and met Julian's smiling, flirtatious eyes, her face flushing red. What are you doing here? I asked coolly. Because my fiancé is here, of course. Julian walked in as if he owned the place, sat opposite me, and casually pulled Tiffany by the arm. Why stand? Sit down, beautiful. Tiffany had been standing straight, like a resilient little white flower, but with that light tug, she fell directly into Julian's lap. She stood up in a panic, only to slip and fall right back onto him. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Her face was beet red, looking at Julian, who was inches away, yet she showed no intention of getting up. Undeniably, Julian fit the role of Prince Charming in Tiffany's script, handsome and wealthy. In my last life, Julian and I had a business marriage with no real affection. He was a famous playboy, yet he tamed his wild ways for Tiffany, willingly leaving the garden of flowers for her. After I disappeared, their union was hailed as a fairy tale in high society. But now Julian wouldn't dare tear up his relationship with me for Tiffany. Over the past few years, I had dedicated myself to learning company management. My parents were pleased and hired many famous mentors for me. I was no longer the Chloe Sterling who knew nothing about business. Relying on vague memories from my past life and what I learned in this one, I helped the company avoid several risky partnerships and handpicked excellent collaborators for my dad. Now my family's business was booming, far beyond what the current Vance family could cling to. I ignored the ambiguous tension between Julian and Tiffany and turned to drag Raven to pick out other jewelry. This ruby is nice, it suits you. How about these emerald earrings? Do you like them? I meticulously chose items for Raven, wishing I could give her the best of everything. Under her helpless, smiling gaze, I had everything we looked at packaged up. Ignoring Tiffany's jealousy-filled glare, we breezed out of the club. After that incident, I had Raven move back home. Our relationship seemed to return to how it was when we first met, the invisible film between us quietly disappearing. Raven accepted my kindness openly now. However, my enthusiasm might have been too much this time, leaving her a bit helpless. Chloe, you bought me so much stuff, I won't even use it. Raven looked at the bed full of clothes and jewelry, not knowing where to start. You'll use it eventually. You're so pretty, it's a waste not to dress up. Hearing my praise, Raven became rarely shy. Even her hand holding a book looked unnatural. Watching the girl gradually immerse herself in her studies, I quietly slipped out of the room. This period was when Raven started her business in my past life. I hoped that with my presence, she would suffer less and smoothly become the dazzling person she was before. Raven got busier and busier. Every minute mattered to her. With just a week of preparation, she secured a guaranteed spot at the country's top university, and her self-taught software design began to show promise. I saw her less at home. Seeing her work so hard, I felt a vague urgency. It's hard to describe, like when you have someone glowing beside you. You can't help but want to move closer to them. While juggling my studies, I kept a close eye on the Woods siblings. After losing his sponsorship, Tyler relied on admirers for a while. But with me around, how could I let him have it easy? If one came, I cut one off. If a pair came, I cut them both off. Even if he was a harem protagonist with an unconscious attraction for wealthy girls, I had plenty of methods, specifically, the methods they used in the past life, and I didn't hesitate to return them all. Desperate, Tyler tried to get help from Tiffany. But Tiffany, currently hot and heavy with Julian, wasn't about to help him. How many times do I have to say it? I don't have money either. You spent the 10 grand I gave you last time. Tiffany's irritable voice came through the recording pen, accompanied by static. Tyler laughed indifferently. What does 10 grand do? I have no income. I'm your brother, you can't just leave me to die. I hooked up with that heiress last week, but she went crazy and asked for the watch she gave me back when we broke up. The richer they are, the stingier they get. Tiffany replied, I'm out of money too. Next month Julian is taking me to Chloe's birthday party. I'll sneak you in. Take the opportunity. If you can snag Chloe Sterling, you won't have to worry for the rest of your life. Tyler was dismissive. That sheltered princess is the easiest to get. If worst comes to worst, I'll just cook the rice, sleep with her. Don't these people care most about their reputation? Tiffany was clearly more cautious. Don't forget she has Raven beside her. She played us when we were kids. If not for Raven, we wouldn't be in this mess. Does a little mutt like her deserve those expensive things? Sabrina was useless, couldn't even kill or cripple her after all that time. Tyler laughed thoughtfully. I hear Raven is even more impressive now. Not only guaranteed entry to Columbia, but she won some award. I wonder if Mr. and Mrs. Pay know about this. Their cruel and stupid voices drifted in and out, but I didn't have the heart to listen further. My mind was occupied by one thing, Raven's background. This was the origin of her becoming the cold-hearted, unhinged heroine in the past life. Before I was sold to the mountains in my last life, Raven's name was already thunderous. She was only 20 then, yet she had clawed her way up, owning several listed companies and becoming the hottest new figure in the business world. But she had a quirk. She didn't allow any men near her. Rumor had it her hatred for men was pathological. people used to gossip, wondering if she had suffered some heartbreak. But how could someone who struggled just to survive have time for romance? I dared not guess what nightmare Raven experienced in her past life. Just thinking about it made it hard to breathe. What are you thinking about? You're zoned out. Raven had come back without me noticing. Seeing me sitting in a daze, she waved her hand in front of my face. I quickly hid the recording pen. How did you have time to come home today? Isn't the studio busy? Raven smiled helplessly. It's your birthday in a few days. I had to come back early to prepare. Prepare what? I was puzzled. She glared at me. What else? A birthday present. Saying that, she suddenly pulled a music box from behind her back. As the music played, a little figure inside began to spin and dance. It's not very expensive, but I hope you like it, Chloe. I took it, stunned, staring at the little princess dancing in the transparent case, my eyes stinging. We both knew perfectly well that the birthday party in a few days wasn't simple. I only treated my birthday as a front to trap Tiffany and Tyler. Despite that, Raven meticulously prepared a gift for me. She was very sensitive. She never asked questions, even when I gave her instructions as a child. She just obediently followed along, singing the same tune as me to drive the Woods siblings away. In my past life, the turning point was my birthday party. That day, Tiffany tricked me into drinking a drugged drink, then brought my parents and a crowd of guests to catch me in the act. Because of that, Julian broke the engagement. I became the laughingstock of New York, the company's stock plummeted, and rumors about me flew everywhere. Not long after, Tyler took advantage of the chaos. I broke the engagement, he and Tiffany ran off together, and my parents met with accidents one after another. Thank you, I love it. Recovering my senses, I smiled at Raven. Raven was anxious at first, but hearing my affirmation, a smile broke across her face. Looking at her smile, I thought, no matter what, I cannot let Raven's parents appear before her. The nightmare she suffered from them in the last life. Let me be the one to cut it off this time. The birthday party was grand. My parents invited elites from all walks of life. Amidst the debauchery, it was a scene of fame and fortune. Raven wore a pale blue gown, navigating the businessmen with ease, toasting and chatting. She was talented. Dad said she was a born merchant, destined for greatness. Amid the cheers, I appeared at the banquet holding my dad's arm. The atmosphere reached its peak. Some lamented why the sterling heir was a girl. Others laughingly plotted how to push Julian aside to marry me. And some brazenly dreamed of how I would stay home and raise their children. After making the obligatory rounds with Dad, I couldn't maintain the stiff smile on my face anymore, and found a place to breathe. From the balcony, I could clearly see everyone in the garden. My gaze locked on Julian and Tiffany, who were thick as thieves. In full view of everyone, their eyes were practically glued together with lust. Finally, Tiffany walked toward the back garden. Not long after, unable to restrain himself, Julian followed. I smirked, gave a signal to a bodyguard in the shadows, and then, in a good mood, prepared to go downstairs. However, just as I turned, a glass of wine was splashed onto my chest without warning. Sorry, I bumped into you, Mississippi. A familiar voice came. I looked up to see Tyler Woods, dressed like a human in a black suit, standing before me. I glanced down at my red wine-soaked dress, disgust flashing in my eyes, but I kept a smile on my face. It's fine. May I ask who you are? Being reborn for so long, this was my first time facing the adult Tyler. I couldn't deny he had some looks, otherwise, he wouldn't have the ability to charm those heiresses. But the face in front of me was just as nauseating as in the past life. Tyler smiled and introduced himself. I'm Tyler Woods. We met when we were kids, Miss Chloe. Have you forgotten? I pretended to have a realization and chatted with him familiarly. A hint of triumph flashed in his eyes, proud that any woman would succumb to his charm. But half an hour later, my cold attitude clearly dissatisfied him. He switched tactics, offering to personally escort me to my room to change. I agreed happily. After all, I had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Unlike the last life, this time Tyler intended to play the adulterer himself. As soon as we entered the room, he suddenly hugged me from behind. Relying on his absolute strength advantage, he forcibly tried to pry my mouth open and feed me something. "Miss Chloe, just take it. You'll be very happy, trust me." Tyler's actions became increasingly violent, but the next second, he was kicked to the ground. With a scream, a blanket was draped over me. Raven had arrived. She looked coldly at the man wailing on the floor, picked up the pill, pried his mouth open, and mercilessly shoved it down his throat. "Eat it. Have the time of your life." Once Tyler realized what happened, he clawed at his throat trying to vomit it up, but Raven wasn't about to let him succeed. She ruthlessly dislocated his jaw. Crack. Tyler lay on the ground, struggling weakly, but soon his consciousness began to blur. I didn't watch any longer. I pulled Raven away, not forgetting to thoughtfully open the door. Inside, I had prepared a big surprise for Tyler. He plotted against me in the last life, now it was his turn to taste his own medicine. Half an hour later, I gathered everyone in the drawing room. Under their expectant gazes, I walked slowly to the stage. I cleared my throat and announced news that shocked everyone present. Starting tonight, the engagement between the Sterling and Vance families is null and void. The microphone carried my voice to every corner of the banquet hall. Everyone froze, then began to discuss it loudly without inhibition. Some guessed my family was too arrogant, ignoring relationships and looking down on the current Vance family. But soon I shattered all their guesses. With a buzz of static, the large screen behind me displayed two figures kissing passionately. Everyone recognized the man. Who else could it be but Julian Vance? The video cut off right before it got X-rated. As the screen went dark, everyone wore expressions of gossip-hungry glee, their eyes glued to Mr. and Mrs. Vance, scanning for them. TSK, the Vance heir really knows how to play, cheating at his own fiancée's birthday party. That woman doesn't look like any prize either. Who didn't know Julian was engaged? Seducing him so openly, she must be desperate to climb the ladder. The Vances care most about face. This is going to be a good show. Looking up, Mrs. Vance's face was indeed hideous, dark as ink, while Mr. Vance had to force a smile to deal with the concerned guests. My parents were initially stunned by my bold move, but after watching the video, even their basic polite smiles vanished. They turned a deaf ear to the Vance parents' pleas. Suddenly the crowd stirred. Tiffany was back. To avoid suspicion, Julian followed a distance behind her. Seeing Tiffany, the crowd's playful smiles roamed over her, whispering. Tiffany, oblivious, smugly thought her outfit today was attention-grabbing enough, until Mrs. Vance slapped her across the face with a loud crack. The smile on her lips froze instantly. Slut. Seducing someone's fiancé in public, do you have no shame? Tiffany was grabbed by the hair, screaming for help. Julian wanted to step forward, but was held back by his father. Soon Mrs. Vance calmed down. After signaling a bodyguard, Tiffany was dragged away, mouth covered. We made a joke of ourselves today. My apologies to everyone. We will meet again. Mrs. Vance put on her usual smile and led Mr. Vance and Julian out of the hall. Dirty laundry shouldn't be aired in public, but now the Vances laundry was flapping in the wind. Tiffany's fate went without saying. High society has plenty of ways to torture a woman who doesn't belong, especially a parasite. The farce came and went quickly. But as one wave settled, another rose. The police arrived. Amidst the confused onlookers, the police went straight to a room in the club and dragged out a pile of men engaging in a drug-fueled orgy. I stood on the second floor, looking down at the chaos, my memories drifting uncontrollably to the past life. I remembered being mocked, ridiculed, framed and tortured, layer upon layer of physical and mental blows. For a while after that, I was so depressed I wanted to kill myself. Like the music box Raven gave me, I should have grown freely in a greenhouse, dancing to my heart's content. But they broke my wings, tore my dress, stomped me into the dust, and finally proudly claimed everything of mine as their own. All while using beautiful words to decorate it. Cinderella became a princess because the prince saved her. But I didn't need that. Raven doesn't need it either. Raven had appeared beside me unnoticed. Turning my head to meet her dark, shining eyes. It was like looking through 10 years of time to see the Raven I first met, resilient, full of hope and warmth. This time, She finally wasn't the unhinged, heartless Raven of the past life. The story didn't end there. The first year Raven went to Columbia, I also secured a spot and joined her. But I didn't rush into academics. Instead, I hid my identity and started interning at my family's company from the bottom up. Raven's small studio also began to make a name for itself that year, quickly becoming the most promising new blood in the industry. Just as everything was moving in a positive direction, Tiffany, blind as ever, appeared. She seemed crazy, tortured into madness. Under Mrs. Vance's torment, lasting a year before snapping was actually impressive. She blocked the entrance to Raven's company, holding acid she got from God knows where, wanting to ruin Raven. But before she could act, she was discovered and subdued. As she was shoved into the police car, she was still screaming nonsense. In the end, Tiffany didn't even know who the main target of her revenge should be. Looking exactly like me when I was deceived to death in my last life. Tyler went to prison and was released not long after. Strangely, he didn't make a big scene. I guess his so-called harem protagonist aura had failed. After all, his current harem was entirely men with special fetishes and special methods. Epilogue. Before I was 7, I felt like I lived in hell. Every day when I opened my eyes, I had to figure out how to fill my stomach. My dad was a gambler who loved to smash things and hit people when he drank. He always called me little bastard because he didn't think I was his. Later, when I grew up a bit and could speak, I understood the village gossips. They said my mom was dirty, doing shameful flesh business, basically, selling herself. Later, figuring my dad was an honest man, she married him without asking for a bride price. Mom thought she hid her past well, but as I grew up, the doubts in the village grew louder. Everyone said I didn't look like my dad, that I was a wild seed mom didn't abort properly. Plus, being a girl, my dad's hatred for me peaked. He started beating me, beating my mom, and eventually deciding that wasn't enough, he dragged my mom out to do business, she solicited customers, and he just sat and collected the money. At first, Mom refused, but Dad beat her into submission, and eventually, she started thinking it wasn't so bad. After they went to the city, no one looked after me. I had no money and was small, so I could only steal food at night, but doing it too often got me caught. Being caught meant a beating. When I was 7, a beautiful couple came to the village. They had a daughter who looked like a little fairy, wearing an expensive dress, held in her father's arms. I stared, stunned. Then the village chief called all the kids to them. That's when I learned the couple was benevolent, helping the village kids go to school, and would choose a few to take to the city for education. I was thrilled and ran toward the chief's house. But before I could get there, my mom stopped me. She grabbed me and tried to leave without explanation. What's the use of a girl reading so many books? Would Mom hurt you? I'm taking you to eat well and live well right now. I struggled, refusing to go, but she slapped me hard several times until I had no strength left. She cursed. I gave birth to you and raised you. Now it's your turn to pay me back. In the city, Mom cleaned my face, put me in a new dress I'd never seen before, and pushed me in front of strange men. She said as long as I made them happy, I'd have food and new clothes. I believed her, and from then on, I fell into an abyss. While my dad was drunk, I stabbed him to death. I'll never forget the look Mom gave me when she returned, like she was looking at a demon. So I killed her too. Finally, I set a fire, took all the money in the house, and left that hell completely. I fled to a strange city and suffered for many years before earning some money. Studying, I was like a sponge, wanting to absorb every bit of knowledge, yet feeling it wasn't enough. Gradually, I started using what I learned to make money. It was hard at first, but as I grew older, I became adept. Unsolvable problems became trivial. I spent 5 years creating my own business empire. Everyone was respectful, calling me President Pay. My life was bright, but no one knew that late at night, unable to sleep, I frantically wanted to die. Because the moment I closed my eyes, those 3 years of nightmares were right in front of me. Nightmares. I began to detest the approach of any man. People said I was sick, a lunatic, but I didn't care. I was already going crazy. Finally, on a dark night, I committed suicide. Before dying, I donated all my assets to charity, with only one request. prioritize helping girls. I thought hell awaited me after death. I didn't expect to come back. Back to before I went crazy, seeing that familiar little fairy again. But this time, she wasn't nestling obediently in her father's arms. She looked like she was crying, like she had seen something scary. I didn't give myself much time because I knew my mom was coming soon. I ran with all my might to the village chief's house, hid among the children, and curled up in a corner. The couple was there to pick children. In the last life, they picked the Wood siblings. I knew it might be the same this time, but I just wanted a moment to breathe, a moment to hide from my mom. When the soft, white little fairy pointed at me, I was shocked. But her eyes were firm, as if I were her lifeline. But clearly she was mine. Many years later, Chloe had someone she liked. She always told him, if not for me, she wouldn't be here today. She said I was her salvation. But that's not true. She was mine.